Okay, welcome to the ninth common session of Sunoikisis's Digital Classics 2016. Today we have, a different common session with many guests from the United States. And this common session, during this common session, our guests will talk about different pedagogical and logistical issues. And we will also talk a bit about using, again, tree banking for Euripides. But now I want to introduce the guests. So we have Kenny Morrell, Gwen Gruber, and then Ryan Fowler, who will join us later during the common session from the Center for Hellenic Studies. So we have a voice from Sunoikisis CHS, and then Matthew Harrington from Tufts University. So welcome to this common session. You can, Kenny, okay? I think you can.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Monica, and hello to all of our friends abroad. I want to thank Monica and all of our collaborators here for letting us modify ever so slightly our plans for today. We were going to talk about some tree banking and the Helen by Euripides, but we're going to, that project is going to be ongoing for a while yet, and we'll come back to you at some point with some results from that. I do want to encourage everyone to congratulate Usama, who has successfully defended his dissertation this month, and that's a great milestone, and we're very proud and happy for that accomplishment. I'm joined today with one of my colleagues from our initiatives here in the United States, Gwen Gruber, who is directing our interinstitutional course on Euripides. And so with Monica's indulgence, we're going to take a little time this morning to talk about what's happening here and hopefully get you a little bit excited about the possibilities of joining us next spring for the fourth iteration of this course. I thought I'd take a few minutes this morning. We're also going to be joined, hopefully, from my colleague from Franklin and Marshall, Ryan Fowler, who has been an integral part of our initiatives for the last many years, and he will hopefully be joining us shortly. But let me begin by talking briefly about some differences and about the challenges that we face here in the United States and how they differ somewhat from the challenges many of you are facing in the European context. The main difference that we have in our systems is the difference between the liberal arts paradigm of higher education and the more specialized university system in Europe. Just to give you some idea that students hey, there's Annalise, how are you? It's so good to see you. Just to give you some idea of how that differs, students at an institution of the liberal arts, like the institution where I teach, and many of them, including the major universities like Harvard and Stanford and Columbia, those institutions, all of these institutions, have undergraduate programs that call for the undergraduates to spend only between about a fourth and up to about a half of their classroom activity and their coursework in a particular field of study. And the other half, and sometimes more, consist of courses outside of their discipline that provide sort of breadth in their academic experiences. And that contrasts considerably with a university system in Europe, where students enter a field of study and concentrate the majority, if not all, of their classroom activities in that field, in that particular field of study, with some opportunities for work in allied fields. But it's a very different concept here in the United States. What that means is that for departments to offer classics in a European setting, the program has to be large enough to provide a full program of study. And that's not the case here in the United States, where it is possible for there to be classicists that work at an institution where they do not offer a major or a minor, or to work at an institution where they do offer a major or a minor, but where there are relatively few faculty members. So here at the Sunoikisis project here in the United States, based at the Center for Hellenic Studies, is really committed to providing some additional support for small programs, and we currently track somewhere around 60 programs, colleges. These are groups of faculty members at institutions of higher education here in the United States, predominantly liberal arts colleges, where there are fewer than 3 faculty members, sometimes only 1. And we follow these institutions to a certain extent to see what they're doing, and we try to provide programming that supplements their programs so that they can offer a broader curriculum. I thought I would just take a minute to tell you that classics. I know that many of you have seen, maybe have seen Greg Crane's fairly recent from last fall, his article about the decline in enrollments in the language courses in the United States, and he writes something a little bit about what's happening in Germany as well in enrollments at the secondary level. And of course, classics programs in Germany at the university level are designed to a certain extent to provide faculty members to teach at the secondary school level, and so this has a sort of a cascading effect in terms of demand for our discipline. But I thought it would be interesting for you to have some sense of what of just how big a discipline the discipline of classics is in terms of outcomes, educational outcomes. This is a study. The data that I'm going to be sharing with you is about 5 or 6 years old now, but it will give you some idea about the size of our discipline. And that is, we did a study of approximately 70 or 80 institutions in the United States where classics is offered in some form as a major or minor, and at the liberal arts colleges, our graduates, that is students that graduate with a bachelor's degree in classics, constitute 1.7% of all graduates. So just a little less than 2% of all the graduates at our institutions are graduating in our programs. At the master's level institutions that we studied, it was about 1/4%, and at PhD and that was true of public PhD offering granting institutions and private large research institutions, PhD granting institutions. It was about 1/2%. So you can see that our field is really relatively very small. And so we face the real challenge of supporting very small programs across the board. And that was ultimately the genesis of our program with Sunoikisis. So I see that Ryan has not appeared yet. So let me just take a few minutes to talk about what that initiative is. And then hopefully he will have joined us for a discussion about a relatively new phenomenon here in the United States. I don't know, and it'll be interesting to hear from Monica and others about how this is affecting the European educational system and landscape, but about the advent of these new courses, these massive online open courses that are attracting really tens of thousands and sometimes even millions of followers, primarily non-traditional students, but with an increasing presence of undergraduates as well. So about a little over 20 years ago, with the advent of the World Wide Web, we began work on on a project to provide support for small programs by bringing together virtually the faculty members of a consortium of colleges in the southeastern United States. And the goal, we started this with funding from the Mellon Foundation, and the goal was to bring faculty members together, and the initial goal was to provide them with a degree of fluency in the use of information technology and to really learn how to make use of the World Wide Web. This was shortly after the distribution or the release of the Netscape graphical browser. So this was really a shift in the tectonic plates of information technology, and we responded to it. And over the course of 2 summers, we held workshops, and we had about a dozen of our institutions build websites. And in some cases, the websites that the classicists built were the very first websites at their institutions. And in the course of this learning how to use this technology, we started to think about, well, what would be ways that we could effectively use it in terms of our pedagogical and our curricular missions. And we decided that really there were 2 areas that we could use this. One was in the support of material culture, and the other was in support of students, advanced students of Latin and Greek. And so our very first initiative was using this medium to prepare students for a field school, an excavation and field survey in Hacı Musalar in southwestern Turkey. And so our very first online experience, similar to what we're doing here today, was really in support of our archaeology initiative. And hello, Mr. Ryan, how are you? It's so good to see you today.
Hi, sorry about that. I just got out of class.
Yep, no, that's great. So I'm just doing a little introduction to Sunoikisis, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the MOOCs.
Great.
And that sort of thing, and then Gwen's going to tell us about our latest operation here.
Great.
So anyway, our very first initiative was in support of this archaeology, and we had what we call a collaborative course, or a cooperative course, in that we all took turns with a couple of weeks of programming to introduce students to certain aspects of what they would be doing on the field survey and excavation. So, for example, my colleague Peter Foss and I did a presentation about field survey to orient them to what they would be doing in the spring. And then after that got underway, and after our field school and excavation got underway, we turned our attention to designing courses for advanced students of ancient Greek and Latin, and we have offered those every fall now since 2000. And these courses are not cooperative, but they're collaborative in the sense that faculty members get together each June and work together to design these. And Monica is going to be joining us this spring, or in June, to work on a couple of our courses. And these courses are open to anyone on the planet now. And if you are certainly interested in experiencing these, you can join us. I'm going to put the URL here in the chat room. And you can see what we're doing there. So we have been doing this. We've been trying, and these courses are designed to supplement and complement the curricula at these liberal arts colleges that I was talking about. And over the course of these now about 15 or 16 years, well, 20 years since the very beginning of it, we've had 60 or 70 institutions participate in this. Hundreds of students have participated in our programs, and our goal continues really to be able to enable these very small programs to provide a full curriculum, a full undergraduate experience within the limited context of the liberal arts paradigm that I just mentioned a few minutes ago. Well, in the course of the last few years, there has been another big tectonic shift in the world of higher education, and that is the development of online courses. And with that, I'm going to turn the time over to my colleague Ryan Fowler, who knows so much more about these than I do, and let Ryan tell you about how we have responded to this, and how the development of this new approach to education is altering and affecting what we're doing in Sunoikisis. So Ryan, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Kenny. I certainly don't know more about the MOOC, the massive online open online courses than you do, but we've been tracking them now for ever since really the year of the MOOC, which it was Time magazine that talked about the year of the MOOC. Now, lo, these many, 5 or 6 years ago, and there's been, for a long time I was blogging about MOOC news. The fanfare has died down considerably, I think, and also the revolutionary aspect of the MOOC has diminished substantially. There was promise of the democratization of education, the accessibility in all corners of the world, and what have you. But it hasn't stopped. The MOOCs have not gone away. This is a MOOC list offered by, as it were, the best universities and entities, and these are all free. These are all free, and you can see the variety of the things being discussed. Some of the first MOOCs at Stanford centered on artificial intelligence and computer science, but there are other topics coming to the forefront. A lot of them are computer related, but certainly not all of them. And variety of languages. There are a number of MOOCs now in Arabic and in Chinese. This one is in Spanish. So I don't have to tell any of you, I think, what they are. They tend to be these massive courses. Kenny, what was the number of Greg's first? So Greg Naj from the Center for Linux Studies had one of, if not the first, humanities MOOC. And Kenny, what was his numbers for the first iteration of Heroes X? This is a course that Greg has been teaching for 30, is it 40 years or 35 years? So what was his number? Do you remember? You're muted, I think. I think you're muted. I still think you're muted. Kenny, I think you're muted. Kenny? Kenny Morrell, I think you're muted. There you are. Okay, there you go. Okay, so,
great.
Good.
I just couldn't find my cursor. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's perfect. Happens to the best of us. Okay, so let's.
I'm at a lot. It was tens of thousands.
It was.
And I can't remember whether it was 25,000 or like 45,000, but it was really tens of thousands that participated in this first iteration. This
is through Harvard. It was one of the first humanities MOOCs to get there, and it really was 25,000 people. Now, because of sometimes there's a sort of initial interest in things from the get-go, but also there are now, as we just saw, I just counted, I think there are 500 MOOCs starting in the next 30 days that are free for anybody, right? 500, at least on that list, and there are other lists. So now there's a lot of competition. There are now professors. There are 3 professors in California who are collaborating to teach French to not just their own students at their own institutions, but anybody who wants to join in. So what we noticed is that there is an extremely passive element to many of these courses. They are not high touch. They are not of the style that liberal arts colleges are used to. The largest class I've ever taught at Franklin and Marshall is 15. And so what we wanted to do was, Greg Greg Nage's class, his course, really has a narrative arc to it. I highly recommend it. I've taken the course twice. It's Heroes X through Harvard University, and it has a narrative arc. And he approaches, for example, the Iliad, certain books of the Iliad with great depth and detail. And he does that in an asynchronous manner, or a chronological manner. He moves around in order to I think discuss an argument about heroes. So what we did is decided, how can we take some of that content, some of those videos that he makes that are online, that are canned, that are usable and are manipulatable for us. How can we use those in a liberal arts setting? And so what we chose to do was we pulled together 4, and this is a model that I think a lot of you are familiar with, 4 institutions where I think altogether we had 100 students, 70 from one and 20 from another, what have you. And we decided to read the Iliad together, 24 books over 12 weeks, 2 books a week. And we called aspects of Greg's larger MOOC course, his videos, his assignments, his of various lengths and types, into a chronological reading of the Iliad, and then but adhered to and used and sort of built on his theory of the hero. And so what came out of this course, this iteration, was the idea that the Iliad was a kind of lamentation of Achilles. This is what the students kind of he globbed onto thematically. And so what we did is we took all of these videos and assignments and pared them down into a particular topic and built on them and used them for our own multimedia advantage in this Iliad course. And the Heroes course doesn't talk about every aspect of classical civilization. So now that we're doing, and Gwen is going to talk about a Euripides course that we can talk a little bit about heroes in Euripides, but that's not really what the class ends up being. But what we're trying to do is look at MOOCs not as courses, and as Greg has come down time and time again, we should look at MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Content. And MOOCs are really giant multimedia textbooks. And the textbook didn't destroy the profession of the professor, so to speak. But really, what we can look at the MOOC as, with videos and little Khan Academy lectures, these small little discrete lectures on a particular topic, and online assignments and synchronous events and asynchronous events, all of these things can be brought in a sort of multimedia fashion to engage students on different levels and different capacities at different times. So we're looking at the possibility of MOOCs, these giant, massive courses, being looked at as textbooks that we can sort of turn inside out and apply in a high-touch manner to institutions where there's a professor on the ground, where there's a possibility for face-to-face content or contact, but also synchronous events online where you could have 100 people online at the same time watching the same thing. That's it in a nutshell. Kenny, is that same about what you wanted me to talk about? Is that?
Ryan, can I add one thing? Because I think that this discussion is very, very interesting. So thank you, because we had 8 common sessions before the common session of today, but this common session is very helpful for people who follow us to understand what we are trying to do. And I think, so this is, yes, I agree with what you are saying about MOOC, and this is the difference with Sunoikisis, because Sunoikisis, both Sunoikisis at the CHS and Sunoikisis Digital Classics, is a community, is not only courses online, contents online, and I totally agree, but we are building a community. At least this is what I'm trying to do. We have faculty members, we have students, and every week we have a community
Yes.
joining this common session. Then, of course, everything is online, so we can have many people around the world following the video. So thank you for, I think this common section is important. Yes, it's true, the original plan was to talk about Euripides, but this discussion is important. So the C of MOOCs, courses, content, and community.
Absolutely. It's really great. It's one thing that has been extraordinary, and Kenny can speak to this as well, is that there is, by and large, the people who take MOOCs are older, they have degrees already. It's not often that they are undergraduates, although there's this article that came out today in the Chronicle of Higher Education, in which in America or the United States, there's this phenomenon of these certifications that are helping people gain entrance into, in particular, computer science master's programs, but they're getting some foothold. They're getting some validity as certificates. But one of the fascinating aspects of Greg's course is we have these people in their later careers, or maybe second careers, older, who are so enthusiastic. And there are thousands of them that get together on their own, voluntarily, in what they call the 25th hour. So instead of the Hero in 24 hours, it's this online cafe where they get together. And Kenny knows how energetic, enthusiastic, and involved, engaged thousands of people all over the United States get together. They know each other by name from different countries. It's fascinating. So the idea of erasing distances between people, not relaying content per se, because as you say, content's everywhere. God, we're inundated with content, for heaven's sakes. Content's not a problem. What's a problem is communication and connection. And that maybe this can erase that. But I totally agree. Community, Monica, that's between professors and students of various types. And see that different people put different things different ways. They communicate things differently. Some better or worse for various types of students. Anyway, Kenny, we can move on. But Monica, I couldn't agree more.
And if I could just let me add to that that we have long thought that the magic, the promise of the internet is not in the dissemination of information. I mean, there have always been ways of disseminating information, but the capability of connecting people, just as we're doing today in live via the internet, and to be able in real time to share ideas and to collaborate and communicate, discuss and debate. And really engage in what I try to convince my students is the actual act of creating knowledge, and that is through discussion and through articulating ideas. So it's a very important thing. Let me take just a couple of minutes to talk about an initiative. So again, in the context of this liberal arts college paradigm that we're working in the United States, one of the things that this particular model offers us is the opportunity to expand the reach of classics into other disciplines at other institutions. And one of the initiatives that we've been working on with a consortium of colleges and universities called the Council of Independent Colleges is to expand the expertise of faculty members in other disciplines, and enabling them to teach texts and documents, artifacts from the ancient world in a variety of different classes. We are now doing this for the 11th year this coming summer, and what we are inviting 18 faculty members from these institutions. There are about 600 or so that belong to the Council of Independent Colleges. We are inviting 18 faculty members from these institutions, and we're going to spend a week with them in Washington, D.C., talking with them about Herodotus, and with the idea of giving them enough background and helping them develop enough expertise that they can use the histories of Herodotus in a whole variety of classes, in political science classes and history classes, in in world literature classes, in humanities courses, all kinds of different contexts, with the idea that this will hopefully stimulate interest in our discipline and ultimately lead, hopefully down the road, to the formation of some programs, some fields of study in our area. So I'm just going to show you really briefly the site of the Council of Independent Colleges. I'm going to put this in the chat room. There's a link to this, and you can go there and you can see that this is what we've been doing. Now, a few years ago, we decided, Greg Naj, the director of the center, who is the principal person involved in this ancient Greece in the modern college classroom, really felt like that we were doing, I think, a good service to our faculty colleagues at these institutions, but we weren't sure that we were having the kind of impact in the classroom that we had envisioned. And so a few years ago, we started thinking about, can we align this program with the Council of Independent Colleges with Sunoikisis? And so Ryan mentioned that 3 years ago, we started a course in translation under the aegis of Sunoikisis using material from Greg Naj's MOOC. The following year, we did a course on the Odyssey, and we started with, and we, in that course, we brought some of these faculty members who had participated in this project with the Council of Independent Colleges and brought their students and their courses into this course. And so we now are working on what I think is an extraordinarily exciting and challenging initiative, and that is to offer courses in translation on the ancient world for students in a whole variety of disciplines at very different institutions of higher education. And that leads us finally to Gwen, who has directed the last couple of courses, last year on the Odyssey and this year on Euripides. And I'm going to turn it over to Gwen to tell us a little bit about these initiatives, and above all to invite you, if you are interested in whatever context you are of participating in these in the Herodotus course next spring, to by all means get in contact with us, because we would love to have some participants from our European context to join in. And I don't know if that's even going to be possible, given the parameters of the system in Europe. But we are, again, Monica and I are machinating in all manner of ways to see if we can't make this happen, even if it happens perhaps even in the context thinking about these courses as a MOOC and opening them up to non-traditional students. So Gwen, take it away. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Kenny. So as Kenny introduced this, what the in-translation courses are supposed to do, or we hope to do, some of our goals are to take that model that Sunoikisis did with the language courses, where we can expand, the expertise, the breadth of a small liberal arts college, a small class, a small faculty group, or a college that doesn't have classics. We can expand the expertise by doing the interinstitutional structures, by having lots of different institutions sort of collaborating together. So 3 years ago, Sunoikisis tried to take that model and expand it to these translation courses, and starting with the Iliad, as Ryan described, reading the Iliad together. I believe that the Iliad course had 4 institutions participating, so you had four sets of students from all different backgrounds who read the Iliad together and had instruction at their home institution, but then came together and interacted across the U.S. The Odyssey course had 6 institutions, and now with the Euripides course we have 7 different universities. And again, this is a way for besides giving faculty support and student support by expanding the expertise and the knowledge base for these courses, it also gives students a chance to interact with other students from different backgrounds. In the Euripides course right now, we have some classes that are very small, and they're classics majors, essentially. Their study focus is classics, but then we also have some larger classes that are English in translation courses. They're housed in an English department. We also have some graduate students studying rhetoric who are part of our Sunoikisis Euripides course. So the idea here, and one of the successes that we've achieved with these courses, is for people to read the same text and then discuss it with people from various backgrounds, and both professors and students. We've got a variety of different people participating. The 2 fundamental ways that we interact and get these various institutions to come together in discussion is, first of all, a common session, just like what we're doing right now, where once a week we all get together and we use the Google Hangout function to talk. And the other major platform that we use is a WordPress site. And let me just show you a little bit. So this is the WordPress site of Ryan's original in translation class about the Iliad. Let's see, here's the one with the Odyssey. So you can see both WordPress, which is a blogging site, and ourselves. We've gotten a little more savvy, and here's the Euripides one. So what this site does is, its main function is to allow students to post blogs and to discuss a particular topic. So we have the students divided into different groups, and these are Attic tribes that we used for the Euripides course. We were trying to get a little competition going between tribes, just sort of like a dithyrambic contest. So we divided the groups into different tribes, and they can post, and we post different topics. We for the Euripides course, we are reading five plays, and it sort of goes through the chronology of the Trojan War. We started with the Iphigenia Aulis before the war. We read the Rhesus of Euripides. And here is an example of a blog post about the Trojan women. So one of our faculty members came up with this this writing prompt, this discussion point, and then the students respond to that, and they can respond to each other and discuss each other's posts. So this WordPress site, that's the main function of it, is that it allows for extended writing, but we also house various other interactive elements. Our common sessions can be viewed here. These are the screenshots of our YouTube tapes of our common sessions, of our Google Hangout common sessions. Another cool function we have for interacting is a chat room. And again, a goal is to get these students engaged with the the material and with each other. And so we have some fun conversations, and this chat room is particularly used during the common session. It's a synchronous discussion that's happening while the Hangout is happening. And so as a participant in the Hangout, I can ask a question into the chat room and get some feedback. And so here are some students discussing Vengeance, and they are bringing up various movies and also quoting Euripides. So that's sort of another element of engagement that we have, is the chat room. So those are our basic platforms. So we've used some course management sites as well, but let's see. But the Google Hangout for the common session and the blog site are our two main ways to have the students interact. So I think that we have been very successful about getting the students to interact with each other, and we've tried to enhance that. The biggest challenge we have is communication. There's this sort of ironic situation where we've got this great conduit for communicating, for engaging, for creating that community that we want, but it also can serve as a barrier in depending on how people use their technology. So trying to enhance communication is one of our biggest experiments. We've tried using a Twitter account. We've tried getting the students to get together on this online platform is our biggest challenge. We tried to use a Twitter account. We use the chat room. We even put separate chat rooms so that the students can in this separate tribes so they can interact with each other. Getting a course like this set up relies heavily on email. We can get the students to use the chat room, to join the Hangouts, but to get that started, we have to get them to read their email and follow the instructions. And so that's always going to be a challenge. The students who follow the directions, I should say students and professors who follow the directions, who engage in the various aspects of the site, together are the most successful. We have groups who watch the common session together. You can watch it individually, or some classes have a set time where they project it together, and that's a very successful mode of engagement, is that they're watching it together instead of just in their dorm room. So I think a lesson that we're learning, or a lesson that we've gotten out of some of our experiments, especially with trying to reach people and utilize this great communication tool that is the internet, is that for detailed language study and some of the larger thematic examination of literature or other humanities topics, that there's no substitute for a personal interactive touch. And the students who are talking about this face-to-face and not just watching the videos, they're getting a lot more out of it. And I think we're hoping that the Sunoikisis translation courses supplement and enhance the student's experience and also the faculty members' classroom experience, but it doesn't take it away, or it doesn't take away the necessity for having personal touch and personal conversations about the content. So doing our best to reach through the internet and give that personal touch without having to be in the same room, but it's always going to be a stronger connection to have those brick and mortar classrooms interacting with each other, and then also coming to our online presence as well. Trying to think if there's anything else. I do think we, despite this sort of barrier that can come up because of being far away, I think we've really done a great job in our classes in creating a community and creating a place where students can have like a formal conversation about a topic. I was thinking of examples. We had in the Odyssey course a big conversation about the morality of Odysseus's deceiving people, and very interactive exploration of that topic on the blog. And this is a very personal thing, or it can be a very personal reaction for people of whether they think that Odysseus is morally justified in tricking his son, tricking Eumaeus, or whatever. So just as an example, it gets a good debate going, and this interaction continues. Hopefully, we build some friendships beyond the course, that these students are talking to each other about these issues and taking this ancient text, ancient content, and bringing it home to themselves about their own, in that example, in their own experiences of people tricking each other for the greater good, or whatever that individual experiences from that. I do think that community, some of these elements are the chat room especially, and the interaction on the blog. We are building a community of students who may not connect with each other. If without such a course, they wouldn't get the value of each other's background and experience. And so that, I think, is our greatest success, and a success that we want to keep going and keep increasing student participation in our common sessions, maybe even having students write some of the questions about the texts so that they can direct the content even more themselves. So,
Gwen,
back to Kenny?
Yeah, Gwen, thank you so much. Can I just add just a couple of footnotes, and then we'll turn the time over to Matthew to talk about his experiences in the classroom. So this presents some real challenges, particularly with the transformation and changes in the in sort of information technology and the place where students are actually working. And we want to move more into handheld devices and find out ways that we can integrate the students' lives in their smartphone world into what we're doing. We've also been using some surveys to try to get to stimulate thinking about the material in a real-time sort of context. So we've tried that this time, which I think has been really interesting, where we have students do surveys about their responses to this sort of to the topics in their classes. So we're working on it, and I will have to say that for me as a faculty member who's participating in this, it's a challenge for me to rethink how I make use of these different communities. It's not a straightforward and easy thing to make a transition from working with students in a traditional sort of college classroom as a community and finding ways to interact and integrate a different identity for the students in our experience. So I'm learning a great deal through this experience, and I'm looking forward to the next iteration, because I already have some ideas about how I can restructure what I do in a way to make better use, more effective use of this online interaction with other students at other institutions. It's been a great experience, and I'm grateful to Gwen and Ryan for all of their help on putting this all together. Monica, that's it for us. We're ready to pass the ball off to Matthew, and we're certainly more than happy to entertain any questions that people might have, either in this context or offline, or in other forms of communication. So thank you for organizing this, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of months here in Washington.
Yeah, so Kenny, thank you for this session, and I have to say that we are learning a lot from you, because you started 20 years ago, so we stand on the shoulders of giants, I have to say, and now we have the technology, so it's easy in some way. We have other challenges because, for example, in Leipzig we have computer scientists as students, and then we have this big semester covering small semesters. As you know, we have many challenges, but now I think so Matthew, you can talk a bit about your work, because also at Tufts University there are many things, many experiments. So Matthew, welcome. You have to unmute yourself. Okay, good.
I have now.
Excellent, thank you.
So thank you, Kenny and Monica. So Tufts, as many of you would know, is of course home to the Perseus project, which has been transformative across the entire discipline, not really just, of course, the universities, but also throughout high school Latin and Greek usage. However, it's largely a sort of center outward-driven paradigm where we push the content outward and there's not really any coming back. It tends to be a lot more passive usage, so accessing, individuals using it, but not really interactively and collaboratively. And so what we've been moving forward with are many actual projects, but among them certainly the Perseus and tree banking environment, which has enormous implications for the instruction of Latin and Greek at the individual classroom, the individual university. And I've been working on this since 2011, essentially developing more complex forms of tag set, which in fact are enormously easier in practice for the students to use because they are more specific. Right, and I'll get into that in a second. But importantly, the direction of this, I hope, and I think we hope, is that it will become a tool that is massively more collaborative and is moving in both directions and also laterally between different scholars, all the way from the first and lowest level instruction in high schools and in universities, all the way up through advanced philological research, where all of these are contributing to one gigantic effort. So I was going to try to share a screen, if I can. Let's see. So this is going to be uploaded momentarily. There you go. Okay. So just from a couple of standpoints to frame the thinking behind using tree banks in a classroom, essentially is the idea that literary Latin and Greek were these constructed artificial dialects that are predicated to a great extent on immersion within similar types of texts, often in Latin and in Greek, under intensive and morphosyntax-based instruction. So that the mastery of these types of dialects is not attained solely through natural language methods and did not actually correspond to normative Latin usage of common speech, the vulgar Latin or whatever you want to speak of it as. And so in order for our students to be able to fully unpack the semantic payload of the literary dialect, that is to say, to do philology or classics, which I think is the real point of what we're trying to do, not just to teach morphosyntax, but to use it as a first step to getting to the real questions which we're interested in. And so we want the students to attain that mastery as quickly as possible and then move on to doing essentially the real product of our own field. So this began, as I said, in 2011 using the tree banks with a tag set which was designed for corpus linguistic research purposes. And that's a much smaller tag set. It's much more it's quite alien, in fact, to the standard terminology. So students in that text set would say that an ablative of means, one might call it, is just an OBJ, a necessary argument of a particular kind of verb, for instance, autor. And in fact, students found this to be fairly challenging. And so what I developed from this and several other classes in the intervening years is a more elaborated tag set where we can be much more specific, and in fact the students find it much easier. So instead of saying predicate nominal structure, you have n-pred, that is to say a nominative which is functioning in the predicate, an accusative functioning in the predicate, so predicate accusative. And so each of these in itself is sort of a self-reinforcing algorithm teaching the students what each case can do and how it would function structurally within the sentence. So point 3 there, I talk about essentially how an indirect statement is a nominal clause, particular kind is indirect statement, and this instance functioning as an object. So he said that da-da-da-da as the object. And so in fact the students found this much easier to use and allowed us to have meaningful discussions using fairly standard terminology, but in a structurally very specific way where it was no longer vague. And so, and as an example, you have this instance where under the older linguistic tag set, this ut clause, you just say it's an adverbial modifier of the coordinated permiscuit and perquisite. All right, that's fine linguistically speaking, but the students, I found it much easier to say, well, this is an adverbial clause, definitely, but specifically this is a result clause. And so it allowed them, again, constantly to be reinforced with the algorithm that if you're talking about a result clause, that is an adverbial clause. It has certain things that it can do and certain things that it cannot do. And so each of these choices that they make using this nested tag set, so for instance, over on the right, you can see when you choose each individual word, you can then choose if it is what particular case, and each of the possibilities will pop up when you do that. In this instance, I'm trying to label the entire clause, and so I just pull down to, is it an adjectival clause? No. Is it a nominal clause? No. Is it adverbial? Yes. Which one is it? Result clause. And so again, iteratively, very, very densely, the students are exposed to these ideas of what morphology and syntax as a combined phenomenon actually operate with to create meaning. So I wanted to show you then also, let's see if I can jump over. Let's see. Can you now see my desktop?
No, I think you have to share again the screen.
I'll do it again. Okay. Let's see.
I don't think Google's able to share a desktop. I think it has to be a window.
Oh my. What is that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
It's very meta.
Now can you see the tree ringing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in terms of process, what I have found, and this was an assignment that was given from Petronius, the Satyricon, given to third semester students. So they were just given these sentences and told to tree bank them. We've been doing it in class for several weeks. And in fact, they produced highly accurate, I believe the average grade was in the about 96% on this particular homework. So only minor errors. So when we first begin, the students can immediately get concepts like adjectival attachment. And because it doesn't matter what order you come in, you can do something like this, of all the weavers. So, inter lusum, in the middle of his game, okay, that guy consumed. Dicta, okay, he used up all the speech acts of all the weavers in the middle of his game. They see that, for instance, eventually you have certain clauses that tend to control subordination or the relationship between different clauses. Dum, da 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 da, consummate, okay. And so, in fact, the students are able to produce these quite easily. While that guy used up the statements of all the weavers in the middle of his game, and then they can see that's clearly not an independent usage. As they continue along in sequence, gustantibus aduc nobis, so while we were still tasting the food, repositorium allatum est, so a tray was carried in, a tray with a basket, right? So if you're thinking about this, allatum est appears to be the actual predicate, and these are choices the students are making entirely on their own. Obviously, it takes a little longer in class. You say, okay, well, if that's the predicate, then what's dum doing? It's giving you the context, so therefore that whole clause must modify allatum. What about the gustantibus? Ablative absolute modifying allatum. And at that point, you can then begin to label the morphology, or in this instance, going down to ablative, and then absolute, or in the instance of consummate, being a adverbial clause, and since it's an indicative, temporal. Okay. And so each of these choices, which can actually happen quite quickly in a classroom, the students can clear all the simple things, like, for instance, the relationship between illa and consummate. Right? Very simple. It's the subject. And what they're left with are only the things that you really want to point out, because they're the things that are holding them up. And what I frequently find is that these are only 2 or 3 particular relationships, and even some of the most complex sentences are actually confusing. And so we can clear all those up very rapidly. And what they'll end up with producing is something like this, where they've gone through and identified the morphology of every single word. And in fact, you can use your own constructed gold standard to grade these things, to detect where the students, statistically speaking, are making their mistakes, the level of accuracy with certain types of concepts, and that can help you refine your teaching. Right? So, in effect, I have found that by even the second semester of Greek and Latin, the students are able to begin to produce these both as homeworks, and then especially in the third semester, to produce completed tree banks that are then useful for the various that's lovely. To be published, essentially. Okay. Excellent. Have I escaped that yet?
Yes, yes, we can see you.
Okay, good. All right. Let me see if I can get back to the other screen share. Desktop. All right. Now, can you see again?
Yes, yes.
All right. So this process then have been doing now since 2011. Students have fairly recently, third semester students tree banked the entirety of the Res Gesta Dei Augusti. I've had higher level students doing Sallust, also a couple of the major speeches of Cicero. And all these become then something that we can publish and for everyone to be able to use from the lowest levels to the highest, and of course to begin to have a conversation around them based on the choices as you would any type of commentary. So in this most recent semester in fall 2015, with 3 second-year MA students who are becoming high school teachers, we engaged with this problem, essentially this massive disconnect between what is done at the university level and what is done at the high school level in terms of Latin. So the AP syllabus largely is an attempt to return to a form of rigor or morphological control and meant to mimic what is done in college. In effect, what has happened is that many times the students are just being forced to memorize massive chunks of English translation without worrying about the Latin at all, and are able successfully to pass the exam only on that basis. And so what we did is tree banked the entirety of the AP syllabus from Caesar and Virgil, which is then going to be pushed out, and we're working on getting the high school teachers to begin to use this so they can, again, both become bold enough to engage with the individual granular nature of the language in their classroom, because they can't be caught out not knowing. It's all right there. And then you can, of course, use it to continually reinforce the crucial skills, like, for instance, in point 1, reading in sequence and also with expectation. Right? So again, the objective really here is both individually, obviously, to train these students to become extremely facile in their control of morphosyntax and Latin usage, but also to make a resource that can really unify the discipline and produce students that are better able to stream into our higher level courses instead of, as frequently happens at Tufts, testing directly into Latin 1, although they've had perhaps 5 or even 6 years of high school Latin. They simply do not control the language. So just as an example, here is the very, very familiar Armor War Kokano, the beginning of the Aeneid. And this kind of structure, the students can either be assigned, they can do it in class with their teacher, they can have it as a resource. There are many modalities where it can be used at all different levels, having them assigned to fix their own, for instance. And structurally, you can see how the core of the sentence is extraordinarily simple, just I sing arms and the man. But the elaborate modification of Wirham through several levels of subordination is really the location of the force of this structure, and that becomes visible in a way that really no one but someone with advanced and many years of training and specific experience would be able to hold in their mind long enough to be able to fully appreciate the structure and the complexity and understand the relationship between the different subordinated structures. But it becomes essentially a bridge, is what I have found. And so this is what our objective is to produce these, helping our own students gain mastery, but also making them available as a resource. So, for instance, this is an example of really the power that is possible in the classroom using the tree banking visualization. So it's pretty easy to see Memora Causas. Okay, fine, direct object. But then why are there these indirect questions just sort of floating around off the end of this? And the answer is because as nominal clauses, they're simply in apposition to causas. They are the causas. Call to mind the reasons due to what, harm, divine power, yada, yada, yada. And so it goes. But it becomes possible to see that the nominal clauses, like indirect questions and statements and other things, really do function as like giant nouns. Most of the time functioning as objects, occasionally functioning here as an apposition, sometimes as subjects even, with impersonal verbs especially. But again, it is a different kind of modality, and I've found it to be an extremely efficient modality in terms of time. Right? So discussing something like an accusative of extent, throughout many years he wandered, they wandered, and so it goes. You know, being able to mark more accurately a potential predicate, right? Who would do that, as opposed to who is going to place. So again, the interface essentially forces the student to repeat these algorithms where it tightly associates the specific choices they make with their understanding of morphology and how that relates to syntax, so that they can really, again, this is not the point, but the point is to be able to master and then get to the level of analysis of fully appreciating and diving into the choices made by the authors and the significance in the broader context. Right? So potential is there. This is an example. You might see the bee metaphor, you know, which is present in the Aeneid. And what you can see is really a disgusting level of coordinators. But you can actually notice, when you fully diagrammed it, that they are very carefully nested to give you a sense of appositions and also basically different options that are mutually exclusive or are potentially placed one against another. So it becomes not just a sequence of ands and ors and all this craziness, but actually a very specific and understandable series, an algorithm again, of choices, possibilities. What are they doing? Right? Bestendend, acum. They're either filling up themselves, or they're accepting the burdens of those that are coming. One or the other, everybody's busy, it exhausts the possibilities. And this is a point to launch into a more elaborate philological analysis with the students. So the same kind of thing I've been now using in second semester Greek. In class, we have gone through the entirety of the Susanna, Theodosian's redaction of Susanna, and they have, you know, with my help obviously, as we were going through, now completed a full tree banking of that text. We're also reading a chunk from Herodotus. So I have been using this as illustration up until this semester, but now we've moved on to production. And in fact, they're able to deal with themselves all but the most complex subordinated structures. So what I'm seeing is a level of control far beyond normal. So just to conclude, what we have seen so far, not much myself, but also my colleagues Gregory Crane and Marie-Claire Beaulieu, that the obstacle of morphosyntax is really removed as early and as completely as possible, which results in a capacity to conduct advanced research on Greek and Latin. And crucially, the outcome of the methodologies evolve and expand from illustration at the earliest level to eventually becoming textual criticism, the production of new critical trees. So the goal is really to bridge the consumption and production of philological research across the entire discipline from high school up to the highest levels. And so you can read these more in full when this is all uploaded, but it is, what I've found is that it is quantitatively much more dense in terms of linguistic discriminations per unit time. You can simply spend a lot more time talking about specific teachable moments rather than trying to draw this on a board or to have the students not know exactly which word you're talking about or be able to jump between the different structures. You can point directly at them, you can pull them around, you can make choices and let them experiment. So, and it focuses therefore on transferable skill, not just what does this one sentence happen to supposedly mean in English, but how do I create meaning out of morphosyntax. So we're training them in textual criticism. They become more expert consumers of edited texts. So they learn why the editors have made particular choices and what it means when they add a comma or choose not to, what they mean when they avoid one certain possibility from the manuscripts and choose another. And in addition to providing interoperable morphology and syntactic data on a greater number of texts, this methodology makes it possible to ask more specific kinds of questions. So in terms of long-term research, it becomes possible to research the stylistics quantitatively. How common and in what way does Virgil use this particular verbal construction? How different is that from what we have of later or earlier texts in this meter? So, and most importantly, the methodology magnifies the audience by making advanced scholarship interactive and accessible to all levels. So we're not really just talking into empty rooms or to 5 people in the world, but we're making it available to whoever wants to engage with those texts. Okay? Great. So that's what I had, and I'm very happy to take any questions or...
Matthew, thank you very much for this. I can add one thing. So given that the topic today is connecting people, well, students in this case, and communication, I can say that Aretusa is a collaborative platform. So students learn how to work together. This is another fundamental aspect because they learn textual criticism, digital philology, real philology, but working together. And as classicists, we know this is a challenge, but this is a good example, I think. So yes, yeah.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I don't have as much familiarity with the tree banking. Monica has showed us a little bit in various meetings about it, but I was interested in, there's an AUX-X addition to the tree banking system for punctuation. I find that very interesting. Does the addition of a placeholder for punctuation help or hurt students? I mean, is that come up? Punctuation being really a lot of the editor's discrepancy or what have you. But I was just curious about is it AUX was a placeholder for a comma or what have you? Am I right about that? Is that
exactly? So there are some more obvious ones like AUX-V, meaning an auxiliary verb. And you have ones that are more uncommon, for instance, quotation marks, aux G, right? Final punctuation, aux K, which is usually automatically marked. And in fact, the commas particularly often come up as a form of coordination in a synditon. And so frequently we will actually use them as essentially something to hang whatever they are coordinating off of. So the editor in that instance, and you can talk very clearly about how the editor chose to put that in, understanding that this is an example of a synditon.
Right, right.
Or a comma, for instance, indicating apposition.
I was going to say apposition makes a tremendous amount of sense as well.
Absolutely. Happens very commonly. Our editor puts that in, and you say, well, why is it there? It's because the editor understood this is an appositional element.
Great.
So, yes, they become very important and clear.
Yeah. Good. That's great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
There is a question in the chat by Anise from Brazil. I don't know, Matthew, if you can read the chat.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So all you have to do when you're using the editor in any case, you go into Edit XML, as you normally would, and instead of ALDT at the very top, you just type in Harrington and save it. And then it will load my tag set. The Greek one is Greek JMH, same thing. You just replace the ALDT with Greek JMH and it will become active. And I also have, for anyone who would like them, full explanations of the tag sets and even handouts that are given to the students as examples if you'd like to modify them and give them out. But I find that these are, with minimal amount of class time, they're able to jump right in, and they're very facile and quite, it's very WYSIWYG. You know, it's very much direct and obvious once you begin to play with it, how you do almost everything.
Okay, okay, thank you. So, well, now, unfortunately, we have to end our common session, but before that, I would like to mention other people who joined us today. So, well, Anise from Brazil. Anise is very, very active in our community, and I have to say that last year we started with Sunoikisis's Digital Classics in Brazil because I went there, I worked with the students. So again, the effort of connecting people and trying to work on communication. So I work with students, and there is a community in Brazil contributing to Sunoikisis. Then we have Dimitar from Bulgaria, the University of Sofia. Again, he has students. Is another faculty member, very active in this sense. He's building a community, a Sunoikis community in Bulgaria. And then we have also Sarah Sal today. She's from Egypt. And now, just a few weeks ago, in Egypt, they started a Sunoikisis group for Arabic. So they are working, they are joining us. So again, we have another community of people from another country with another language trying to expand our community, but again, working on connecting and communicating. This is fundamental, so I agree with you. I don't know if there are other notes, questions?
I did want to mention very quickly, if I may, I just got an email from Claudia Filos, who's responsible for Greg Naj's big community, and she gave me some numbers, current numbers of enrollment and who's involved. I just wanted to mention, I know we have to end soon, but his right now his MOOC has 6,140 participants, and they're getting about 100 new enrollments each week. That said, infamously, and this is true in his MOOC as well, they're winding down, so they are at about 7% participation, and the average for MOOCs of completion rates is about 4%. So we start out with 25,000, but we don't end up with 25,000. But with our 25, the community that's outside of the class, they have over 1,600 registered members. There are 20 that are most active, and there are 5 to 10 that are in every single event of any recorded Hangout, and another 15 or 30 that are watching. But the page views are 30,000 per month, and this month in particular, it's over 36,000. And in March of 2015, they had 21,000 page views. So, and there are about 500 in the outreach emails that the listserv is about 500 people. So we're talking about a massive community, and this goes across the entire globe. So it's rather, you talked about community, and this is what we were talking about here. The possibilities are absolutely extraordinary. By and large, again, I've met a number of them. They're older. It's not necessarily the 18 to 22-year-olds, but as we saw before, that's maybe taking. There's more of a foothold in that realm. So anyway, just thought I'd mention that.
Well, thank you very much. So this is great. Yes, this is really great, and especially for classics, because this is classics. So we always say that there is a crisis of classics teaching, etc. But this is very encouraging. So we have the tools for involving people, and so we have this positive and excellent result for our field. Okay, so now unfortunately I have to stop the broadcast. So thank you very much for this great common session. We had another plan at the beginning, but in the end we had a great common session, and this is Sunoikisis, so informal discussions among faculty members. This is what I'm learning. So we have plans, but sometimes no plans, but with excellent results. So thank you very much, and see you next week with the 10th common session. We will have Michel Brunet from the University of Lyon, and we will go back to digital epigraphy. So thank you all, and goodbye. Bye. Thank you.